Okay, hi everyone. The studio wasn't available today, so I'm in my office. So a little bit smaller here, but I've zoomed in. I hope you can see it. Lesson 6, Riot Anatomy. We're going to get a little more specific today about the actual anatomy or the structure of the vertebra and the discs between the vertebra. So you have some images up on Google Classroom you can follow along with, or any other images you found online that you find helpful, or in your anatomy coloring book. There are a couple okay plates to color. I didn't find great ones as far as the vertebra were concerned, I didn't think. So I'm going to give you a little schematic, and you can follow along here. Let's see. So at the sort of most gross level, if we're looking at a single vertebra, just a basic single vertebra, there are two sort of main parts to the vertebra. So if we're taking a bird's eye view, if you were to lop me in half here and take one of my vertebrae and look at it this way, bird's eye view of my vertebra, and this is the front, and this is the back, the basic structure is going to be a body. It's called the body of a vertebra, where the weight is transferred through from vertebra to vertebra. And then what's called an articular arch. It looks something like this, an arch shape. Okay, super gross level, right? Body, articular arch. You can see it's in an arch shape. And then running through here is the spinal cord. Running lengthwise. So if you take away nothing else about the anatomy of a vertebra, know that you've got a weight-bearing front to your vertebra called a body. You've got an articular bony arch that heads towards the back and creates this sort of tunnel through which the spinal cord runs. So and I think last time I talked about, or I mentioned that anytime you hear articular, right, it means jointed, or you're talking about some aspect of a jointy relationship. So so this is called the articular arch. So you can guess what happens in this part of the vertebra. That's where the spine is jointed. That's where the joints happen. That's where movement is allowed to happen. And we'll talk more about specifically how that happens. But just to say, articular arch is about movement, and it's at the back of the spine. And the body of the vertebra is about weight bearing, and it's in the front of the spine, right? In front of the spinal column, right? So body, right? Body, weight bearing, front of spine, articular arch, movable back of spine. And I really like the image, and I don't know where it comes from. I think I've heard it a couple different places, but I use this sometimes with my students, of sitting on a bicycle seat or a motorcycle seat, right? And you've got your seat and you've got your handlebars, right? And you want to be seated on your seat so that the handlebars can be free for movement, right? So if you're bearing down on your handlebars, you don't have as much movement possibility, and you're not as stable on your seat. So similarly, when we're riding our spine, if you will, we want to have our weight firmly passing through the front of our spine, right? So that the back of our spine can do this, can steer us and can move us. So play around just that. If you stop this video now, that's a lot, and a lot to take away with and play with over the course of the week. And all the teachers at Riot can help you with these ideas, because they're very much part of how we work with our Alexander practice. So that's the basic schematic. I'm going to get a little more specific about the different parts of a vertebra. So let's see, I'll do the body again here in black, and I'll try to do it a little bigger. Again, you've got other better images to follow along with. So that's the body. And if we're then to work our way out along the articular arches, the next part of the vertebra are called pedicles, ped as in foot. So sort of the feet of the vertebra are here in green. I hope you can see this, yeah? If you can't, just check your drawing for pedicle. So that's the pedicle. And then creating the back of the arch, if you will, are called the lamina. They're sort of mirroring the pedicles. Yeah. And the lamina means scale. So if I were to turn this vertebra so that you were looking at it from the back, yeah, these lamina would be going this way down the spine, and sort of like scales, like fish scales. If you take a look at this one that you have of the thoracic vertebra, you can see along here, they look kind of scale-like. Yeah. So those are the lamina running along either side of these sort of pokey outy bits that we'll talk about next. Yeah, so on either side, creating this sort of scaly effect along the back of the spine, especially along the thoracic spine. Those are your lamina. Yeah. So then we have a series of what are called processes, and anytime you hear process relative to the skeleton, it means sticky outy part. Yeah. Often where muscles are attaching to and pulling on. Remember how we talked about how where there are sort of protuberances, that's often where muscles are attaching to bone and applying a pulling power. So the bone gets stronger and sort of directional in accordance with those pulls. Yeah, so processes as sticky outy bits. We've got 3 processes on each. Actually, we have more than that, but from this angle, we're looking at 3 processes. So the one in the back, again, if you're looking at someone's spine, the pokey outy bits that you can touch, yeah, those are called your spinous processes, and that's right here. Yeah, so I'm drawing these in different colors. Of course, they're continuous. Yeah, so these lamina become, when they come together to create that pointy bit along the back of the spine, then we call it something different. We call it the spinous process. SP, spinous process. Yeah, and then on either side, the same thing happens where the lamina and the pedicle come to meet and create a sticky outy bit here and a sticky outy bit here. Yeah, those are called the transverse processes because they're sticking out to the side. So TP. Yeah, so 2 transverse processes on either side and a spinous process on the back. Let's see, there's a fancy name for that hole through which the spinal cord runs, which is the vertebral foramen. Yeah, vertebral foramen in pink. Foramen means, I think, window, or comes from a root of window. I could be wrong about that. But anytime you hear foramen, it means an opening. Yeah, so this is the vertebral foramen through which the spinal cord runs. Yeah, so we have this nice bony encasing to protect the spinal cord all the way up and down the spine. Yeah, okay, so that's the sort of bird's eye view of a vertebra. I'm going to then give a side view. Let's see, I'll get a clean paper here. And again, you've got a side view in your images to follow along with. So let me try to stick with the same colors. So if I have so now if I'm looking at the side, take a look at this, this one. Yeah, I have an image of the lumbar vertebra. because that gives you a really nice clear side image. And you can see the space between these vertebrae is where the discs are going to go, and we'll talk about those next. But the spaces here aren't really spaces. Those are where the intervertebral discs are. So we're looking at this orientation. So here's body again, body of the vertebra, front of spine, and then here your spinous process is back of spine, where the movement's happening. Yeah? Okay, so I'll just draw schematically. Here's a body from the side. Yeah? And then remember, we've got those lamina. What color did I do? The lamina. So the lamina, those scaly bits, yeah, that are coming down in the back to become the pokey outy bits, the transverse processes at the back of the spine. Back of spine, front of spine. Back, front. Yeah. So from this angle, we can see what is above and below, what comes off of the body of the vertebra, above and below, actually off of the articular arch. And those are articular processes. So you've got two arches. So again, the word process, right, and the word articular, right? So it's a sticky outy bit, a process that articulates, that's jointed, right? So we're getting into where the jointed movement happens in the back of spine. So they look kind of like little shark fins, if you will, and they kind of come up. This is very schematic, I apologize. Very schematic, okay? You got a superior articular process, so one that's above, that comes off the top of the vertebra, and then one that comes down the bottom. That's called the inferior articular process. So if you can then imagine that these vertebrae are stacked like this. Yeah, let's see if I can draw this. The superior articular process on the coming up off of the next vertebra down, yeah, is going to do, this is really bad. Coming off of this body. Or not off of the body, off of the articular arch. Yeah. So when the inferior process comes inferior articular process comes down and the superior articular process comes up, here, yeah, is what's called the facet joint. Yeah, and so where these two guys meet is a joint. Yeah, so you've got a joint here between this vertebra, or this process and this process, and then there'll be another one up here, right, between this process and this process, right? And since we're just looking at one side, this is happening one on the right and one on the left on every single vertebra. So at each vertebra, each vertebra articulates on both the right and the left side with the articular process of its superior vertebra and inferior vertebra. In other words, there are for this guy here, he is articulating, or she is articulating with two joints on top, one on the right and one on the left, and two joints on the bottom, one on the right and the left. So that's 4 facet joints for each vertebra. Yeah, and then between here are I wish I had a different color, but I don't. So I'll use more pink, since I like pink. Yeah. So in between body and body, this is going to be the articular disc, which we'll talk about next. So we have disc, body, disc, body, disc, body, disc, body, disc, body, disc, body, all the way down our spine, from head to tail. And what did I want to say about that? Oh, just that in some schools, or I've heard some people talk about, if we're talking about, I mean, it depends on what we define as a joint, but if we define a joint as a place where movement can happen or where relationships exist that are about facilitating movement and adaptability in the body, we could say that between the body and the disc is a place, is an opportunity for a little give, a little play, a little movement. We wouldn't call it a synovial joint or a skeletal joint, but we could call it a joint or a place of relationship of movement where the disc relates to the, or where the body relates to the disc, and then where the disc relates to the body. And if we included that, or those places in terms of where movement potential exists in any one vertebra, we could add it up to 6 places, one on top, one on the bottom, relating to the disc above and the disc below for each vertebra, as well as those 4 facet joints in the back. So that would be 6 places of movement per vertebra, all the way along the spine. So a lot of times you'll hear Nanette say, and I use this phrase with my students a lot, is that when we're talking about the spine, we're really looking for a little bit of movement in a lot of places. Yeah, a little bit of movement in all of these places to find balanced, dynamic relationship between the top and bottom of the spine. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that relatedness of head to tail next time. But just so you have a sense, a little preview of how many of these relationships we're talking about from top to bottom of spine. Where's my list? And maybe check out a spine if you've got a, there's I think an image uploaded for next week's lesson, or maybe I'll put it in this week's lesson, but just get out a spine. This is from David Gorman's book. In my edition, page 46, is a really nice view of the spine from 3 different directions, as well as some nice drawings of the vertebra. It looks like a cervical and a lumbar vertebra. So take note of a spine. And again, we'll talk next time more about the curves, et cetera, of the spine. But just for naming the parts this week, we've got in our spine, the first 7 vertebrae are known as cervical vertebra, neck vertebra. So from the top of our spine, which is between our ears, behind the bridge of our nose, and the where C7 is, which is the super pokey outy bone here, but your neck has 7 cervical vertebra. And then your thoracic vertebra is the next sort of region of the spine, and these regions are sort of defined by which direction generally the curve of the spine tends to occur. So again, we're going to talk more about the curves next week, so don't worry about the curves too much. But just know that in the neck, the cervical curve comes slightly, if you're looking at my profile, it's going to come slightly this way. Curve slightly forward in space. And that's, so 7 of those. My thoracic spine then, well, I don't know if mine does, but in theory, my thoracic spine goes this way. Curves towards the wall behind me. And you've got 12 thoracic vertebra. And thoracic, it's a thoracic vertebra if it has a rib attached to it. So we have 12 ribs on each side, 12 thoracic vertebra. So where there's thoracic vertebra, there is rib. So 7 plus 12, 7 plus 5. 7 plus 12. And then the next region, the lumbar region of the spine, has 5. And the lumbar curve is going to come again this way, towards this wall, matching my cervical curve. And we've got 5 lumbar vertebra. So a way I remember those numbers is that 5 lumbar and 7 cervical adds up to 12, and there are 12 thoracic. So cervical plus lumbar equals the number of thoracic. So far we're at 24 vertebrae, getting us down to the sacrum. So once we get down to the sacrum, which is this triangle-shaped bone that you can feel right here, yeah, this sort of plateau at the base of your spine, used to be 5 vertebrae. Yeah, and you can see in the pictures, just take a look, and we're going to have a whole class on the sacrum, so don't worry too much about it. But you can see in this image in David Gordon's books and others, you can see how you can see the remnants of 5 distinct vertebrae that then have fused together to create this sort of triangular or heart-shaped bone that we call the sacrum. And that actually, I was really surprised to learn that fusing process, I don't even like that word, but that coming together process doesn't fully occur until our 20s and sometimes even into your early 30s. So again, we'll talk more about that in the sacrum class, but I like to think of the sacrum having the memory of those 5 vertebrae. So do the 5 vertebrae of the sacrum have this articular ability now for us as adults? No. But do they have the memory of that? Yes. So many anatomists will count the sacrum as 1 bone. In my counting, I like to count it as 5. You can count it as however many you want. And then the sacrum articulates with the tail, which is the lowest part of the spine, the tail or the coccyx. And there's also debate on the coccyx. It's generally, it most often is a similarly fused or sometimes not fused relationship of 4 teeny, teeny, tiny vertebrae, which you can again see. It looks sort of like a little beehive in this image. But some people have 3, some people have 5. So I don't know. If we take an average, say it's an average of 4 vertebrae that may or may not have, again, fused, we get sort of a, I don't know. What do I want to say? Variable number of vertebrae in the human spine, as far as I'm concerned. So you may hear 26 vertebrae by my count, with 5 sacrum and 4 tail. We've got 33 vertebrae. Let's see. I think that's kind of where I want to stop for now. I think we'll do discs in another class because this was kind of a lot of information. So let's stop there. And only other thing I wanted to say, no, I think that's it. I think that's good. Okay, so go think about the front of your spine being weight-bearing, the back of your spine being mobile, and I'll see you next time. Okay.